Because the perfect solution is worthless, when it is actually not in use, or if it misses real world context, right? And that kind of taught me in tech transformations, adoption is the real finish line, not the deployment, right? So just deploying a solution is not end of the job. Adoption of the technology is where, the real finish line is. And that empathy is just as important as an architecture diagram.
Can we hear it from a CISO's lens?
So whenever there is an introduction of a new technology, there is always an operational risk, that is carried forward. And I always believed in that, be it robotic process automation, which started in 2015, 2016, but it had an early death in the entire, life cycle, right? So what excites me most right now is the agentic AI, right? Systems that don't just respond to the prompts, but can autonomously reason, plan, and across multiple tools and data sources.
Hello and welcome to the mainstream. I am Simran Shivalkar, your host for today, and we are back with the latest episode from our weekly live series. Well, today we have yet another visionary leader leading the tech space and the information security as well, Mr. Sekhar Pidathala. Firstly, Sekhar, thank you so much for being a part of the series
Pleasure.
and joining me today.
Pleasure.
Absolutely. I will quickly take this moment to introduce Sekhar and share a few things about him. To begin with, he has with over 20 years of experience leading technology and information security in the banking and insurance sectors, along with advanced executive MBA from prestigious institutions like Indian School of Business, Wharton and London Business School. Sekhar brings valuable insights into leadership, innovation and digital transformation. He is also currently the Chief Information Security Officer at TradeU. Well, in this live session, we will definitely get to hear some incredible insights about the changing and the tech landscape, the security and the threat landscape as well, and also some deep diving into his journey. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Firstly, Sekhar, thank you so much for joining us once again. And like I said, about 20 years of leading tech transformation, leading security, information security as well, with some pretty complex industries. Can you tell us a bit about your journey? What has really changed for you? And how has it been so far?
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Simran. Great to talk to you. So, one moment, that I would say, 20 years really been crazy. There's one moment that you would always, want to remember, or rather, changes the course of your journey, right? That was when I was leading technology and information security in one of the financial services between 2009 and 2018. We had invested in building what we thought was a perfect solution, which was, we thought it was highly secure, scalable, and, it's going to be future proof, et cetera, et cetera. But during user testing, one of the business managers, has said that I can't use this solution because it slows down my conversation with the customer. That was a wake up call for the entire team, who was involved in kind of developing that solution. And we realized that, we've been focused only on engineering elegance and compliance checklist, that we had kind of sidelined the human experience or the user experience, right? From that point, I kind of made two changes, I would say, starting with the user's moment of truth. The exact second when technology impacts the ability to perform, and design for adaptability, not perfection, right? Because the perfect solution is worthless, when it is actually not in use, or if it misses real world context, right? And that kind of taught me in tech transformations, adoption is the real finish line, not the deployment, right? So just deploying a solution is not end of the job. Adoption of the technology is where, the real finish line is. And that empathy is just as important as an architecture diagram.
Absolutely. When we talk about security today, it can sometimes feel like the no department. But, along these years, a lot of things have changed. Technology has come into big evolution. AI is kind of setting
Right.
Everything on at par. So when we talk about innovation today, it needs its own liberty, its own freedom. How do you keep that balance when it comes to protecting the business and also letting it grow at the same time?
That's very right, because gone are the days when a security guy can be a cop. He needs to be part of the business and talk the business language, right? A few changes I think has helped the journey along the way is embedding security early. We call it a shift left, basically, right? Bring security architects into design discussions, not just post development process, but get them along the journey. This kind of turns late surprises into early wins, which is good. And use risk-based decisions. Not all risks are equal because they focus some of the data elements or some of the business processes where you consider them as the crown jewels need heavy controls. For lower impact areas, it gives team more experimentation freedom with lighter guardrails, and the guardrails need not be so stringent. For low impact areas, you can take a chance there. Create safe sandboxes, right? So provide an environment where teams can experiment technology without going months of review, and once that is successful, I think is when you can actually move them into the production. And one should be ready to translate security into business language, instead of saying, hey, you cannot do that, it's insecure. Let's start saying, if we launch this without XYZ controls, this is going to be the impact. Maybe because it is not regulated, or maybe because there is not enough return on security investment, etc., right? When leadership understands this trade-off, the decision feels shared. You're actually taking that journey along with the business leaders, and it doesn't seem that you're actually dictating the mandate or the controls to be followed. Measure and celebrate secure innovation wins. I think these are the points that I kind of embedded into my journey, right from, I would say, 2009, last 15 years, from when I have started looking at security in my previous experiences.
Fantastic. Along those lines, I have another question for you, Sekhar. DevSecOps is something that has become like a buzzword for a lot of security.
Sure.
We've been hearing, keeping aside the nitty-gritties, what's the biggest game changers that you have seen, embracing this kind of way of working and this kind of technology? What's really about this approach, if you can shed some light on that?
Yeah, sure. See, we talked about shift left, earlier in the conversation, right? But for me, the real game changer was not just shifting securely left, but also making it invisible without making it optional, right? Early on, every one of us, I think, treated DevSecOps as a new committee, lots of meetings, checklists, approvals, etc., etc. It slowed teams down, and honestly, nobody would love it. Right. So the breakthrough came in when we actually baked security into the pipeline itself, so that developers did not have to remember secure, and security just happened by default, right? So, and we moved to a model where security test runs were automatically run and part of the CI/CD pipeline, dependency scanning and container hardening, etc. It just happened through the journey of the development. A separate ticket was required or a separate toll gate was required, etc. It was all part of the journey. What was the impact? Yeah, the impact reduced drastically, because vulnerabilities were caught within minutes of the code being written. So it kind of dropped by weeks, and it also increased the speed to market.
Sekhar, today we are hearing a lot about AI, right from its branches from Gen AI to agentic AI. And of course, there would be a lot, like cloud had its era. Is this a challenge or an opportunity? Is this a mix of both? Can we hear it from a CISO's lens, perhaps? What are some of the risks? What are some of the pain points that actually are keeping security leaders up at night talking about risk?
For me, it's a mix of both, right? So whenever there is an introduction of a new technology, there is always an operational risk, that is carried forward. And I always believed in that, be it robotic process automation, which started in 2015, 2016, but it had an early death in the entire, life cycle, right? So what excites me most right now is the agentic AI, right? Systems that don't just respond to the prompts, but can autonomously reason, plan, and across multiple tools and data sources, right? In fintech, specifically healthcare, and I see a huge potential, even in logistics, also for self-orchestrating processes, where they can be used for identifying any kind of anomalies, taking corrective actions, and learning from the results without waiting for any human intervention.
Right.
The upside of agentic AI is obviously massive operational efficiency, faster decision loops, and hyper-personalization. When I say hyper-personalizations, services tuned in real time for each customer, not just segments, right? What keeps us up in the night is risk convergence, right? Autonomy without sufficient guardrails. Agent can take actions, across the systems and can also make a big mistake or manipulate it. Model supply chain risk, you have bias getting introduced, at scale. A flawed decision logic, for example, isn't just wrong once, it's probably wrong millions of times faster, right? So because these agents run at a faster pace, regulatory whiplash, right? So the tension is this: the technology is now outpacing the governance curve.
Correct.
And to me, and I think the next big leadership challenge, I think, is building the AI governance that move as fast as the AI itself, so that we can embrace innovation without walking into a black swan event.
Absolutely. I think rightly as you said, so the problem here is if innovation or technologies like AI could perhaps overpower the governance here, and kind of creates a situation. Today when we talk about even the internal communications or the internal operations, a lot of us, we do use tools like AI tools, chat GPT on regular basis to kind of draft an email. But what we don't realize here is what information we are putting out there. Recently we heard, Sam Altman kind of disclose that these conversations are not private, they're not secured. How much information is too much information, Sekhar, and where do we draw the line?
How much information is too much information is, from my perspective, I think it's more of a personal, call. And when it comes to the corporate world, definitely there has to be guardrails, defined for identifying what can be shared and what cannot be shared. And when it comes to, identifying the data elements, for example, I think identifying the crown jewels is the key, right? So those crown jewels, definitely is big no, where you cannot put it on large public LLMs, for example. Customer information, is definitely a no. I would say that I think, personally, I think we have to define our own guardrails, what you want to share and what you don't want to share. And that's how things need to be moved.
Absolutely. Lastly, you have also juggled a demanding tech leadership while also pursuing advanced executive programs like your MBA from world-class business schools. Moving back to your experience, your early days of your journey, what drives you personally to keep learning and keep growing? And even how has that kind of influenced your leadership style?
Yeah, sure. I think, for me, the drive comes from a mix of curiosity, responsibility, and also humility. I saw how fast technology was changing and realized that biggest risk for any leader wasn't making a wrong call. It was making a perfectly logical call based on outdated mental models. Right. And that's what pushed me into the executive MBA, from Indian School of Business, not because I needed another credential, but because I needed to constantly refresh my lens. So unlearn to learn, right, is something that I followed all the way. That's how, I've landed up with the executive MBA. And the curiosity part is just personal. And I love connecting dots between disciplines, how behavioral economics, for example, explains user adoption, how geopolitics shapes, cybersecurity. We are seeing how fast the world is changing now with all geopolitical conflicts happening around. There's definitely a great, place for cybersecurity in the current geopolitical scenario, and how AI ethics intersects with the product strategy, right? And the responsibility part is to basically my teams and stakeholders. If they are trusting me or trusting the security, for example, to steer the ship, I owe it to them to keep sharpening my navigation skills, right? Over time, I think this mindset has shaped me into a leader who brings cross-industry insights into tech strategy. If you see, I've worked early on in my career, I've worked with all tech major companies like Dell, IBM, HP, and then I transitioned into banking and financial services, and now I'm in a fintech. It's a product company, right? Cross-industry insights into technology strategy or security strategy. Build teams that are comfortable enough challenging my thinking, because learning is always a two-way street, right? So because it's not just going to be a one-man show. And if I stop learning, I stop leading. It's that simple.
Absolutely. I think unlearning to learn is one thing that we all can collectively, take away from this. That goes without saying, not just for somebody who's into tech, but the non-tech people as well. Great mantra here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sekhar, for walking us through your journey, sharing your insights. Well, before we wrap up, I also have a surprise element for you. Just a couple of rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yep. Okay.
All right, let's begin. One tech gadget that you cannot live without.
Okay, I would pick two, and I'm not a big gadget freak, but yeah, two simple ones are my watch and my phone. My watch just keeps me moving, mindful, and on schedule without constantly staring at the screen. And my phone obviously, for us, I think without phone, we never can think of living in this world at this time. Is just one hub for me, because calls, messages, meeting schedules, etc. Together, like they're like the Batman and the Robin of my daily life, at least.
Absolutely, that goes without saying. And nice parallels here, Batman and Robin. The best book or podcast that you have recently come across and enjoyed?
Okay, I would pick a book that I've read recently, and it's been recommended by one of my mentors, Matthew Fairless, who's currently with one of the top universities based in Switzerland. So he introduced me to a book called, Care to Dare. It's written by George Corizer, Susan Goldsworth. It's a great deep dive into secure-based leadership. The idea that best leaders create an environment where people feel safe enough to take bold risks. Personally, I found it specifically relevant in technology, where innovation demands both psychological safety and the performance pressure in just at the right balance. So it's one of those books that makes you reflect not just on how you lead, but why people choose to follow you.
Wow, that's really inspirational. I think we will definitely take that as a recommendation here. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Sekhar. Moving on, your go-to stress buster after a tough day.
That's easy. That's my golden retriever. That's my ultimate stress buster. A wagging tail, all right, has this magical ability to erase your mental whiteboard at the end of the day. Whether it's a quick game of fetch, a long walk, or just sitting together on the couch, I think no judgment, no agenda, just right now
Right.
energy, right?
Absolutely.
And unlike work problems, they don't care about KPIs, right? Unless the K stands for the kibble, unless the K stands for the kibble, right? So yeah, I mean, he's been my stress buster the last 4 years at least.
Wow, wow.
He's
What
4 years
was
old
that?
now, yeah.
If you don't mind sharing the name.
Yeah, we named him Capri. He's Jan first born, so Capricorn. So we just
Wow.
call him Capri.
Very nice. Next one, favorite app for productivity or fun?
Oh, that's my notes because it's just deceptively simple. It's my go-to for capturing quick ideas before they vanish, right? And also, you organize your day plan, the meeting notes, right? That's productivity app, which is for me. But for fun on the go, it's Spotify because nothing makes you happier than catching a song that you love, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. Which fictional character do you think would make a great Sisu?
One from Harry Potter, Hermione Granger,
Wow.
because she's relentlessly curious and she's always digging deeper into why behind the magic. And at the same time, she's also rules aware, but being pragmatic at the same time. And she's always prepared for the unaccepted.
Perfect. Lastly, if not for technology, if you weren't in tech, what would you be doing? Any space that you would be, leading or dominating perhaps?
Yeah, so one space that I'm definitely interested and would be exploring at some point in time, maybe over the next 10 years. And that's because probably my dad was also into academia. So academia would be my second home. And I would probably be teaching technology strategy and cybersecurity at a university, digging deep into the case studies, mentoring the next generation leaders, and publishing research on where tech policy and ethics intersect, right? At the end of the day, I think it is still the same mission, turning complex ideas into actionable insights, but just in a lecture hall, not in a boardroom, maybe. Yeah. So
Wow, I mean, that was the rapid fire round. Pretty interesting. Thank you so much, Sekhar, for being a sports and answering our questions as well. That brings us towards the end of the session. Thank you once again for being a part of our Thursday live series. While we wrap up, I most certainly look forward to connect with you again.
sure. Thanks, Simran. Nice talking to you all.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good day. Good day. Bye bye.
Good day.